no doubt now. I mean, you can see this is the big one. Now, I hope and pray there's some way to avert this, push it back, whatever, but my gut is 50 times more concerned than it's ever been. I mean, I almost feel bad even being here on air, not getting, dug in out in the countryside. But I realize I need to be on air as much as I can. I got a bunch of quick, short questions for you, Matt. You got to come back for like an hour and a half if you can next week, or hell, even maybe tomorrow, part 2 or something, because I want to really flesh this out historically, get into your military background and stuff as a guy that led, SEALs, not just, out there heroically doing a lot of this work. But clearly from your training, a lot of classified stuff, I can see you've really been behind the curtain. Looking at this, though, just quick questions. The police aren't perfect. They've been militarized by the globalists, but they're more awake than the general public, I found. Clearly there's a move to cause a civil war aimed at local government, kill the cops. Kind of the army of one thing, but, get every little thug to go shoot a cop in the back of the head. That's what Soros and the globalists have been pushing, clearly. What is their hope there? And shouldn't that then, and I've seen the police actually get it, shouldn't that be what we reach out to police with? That, hey, we're doing Overwatch. We want to work with you. This is here. You better get operational now to stop this, because they need to be the front line with local government to identify globalist operatives locally, you name it. So when all this goes down, they understand which side to be on. And I'm serious. I think that's absolutely key. What do you say?
Yeah, there's sort of a war within law enforcement that, Stuart Rhodes and the Oath Keepers are certainly right. We can't turn against the police. The police are going to be required to preserve civilization. And they'll be completely, if they can't watch their backs, as Stuart, the way that Stuart puts it.
That's why the enemy's targeting the police. That's when people get mad at me that hate the cops because the cops have done something bad to them. I get it, but the communists want to take them out. Get that, folks? Get that?
Right. This is a Marxist takedown, and that we're in the stage. Lenin called it the worse the better. When they said, there's food riots in Leningrad, he said the worse the better. You have to create those 1789, bread riots.
He said more blood. He said more blood. Just kill, carnage, random, fear.
And imagine, they didn't have electricity in 1789. They didn't have electricity in 1917. So the linchpins that you would pull out would be, say, the food factories that bring the bread to Leningrad. That train doesn't make it for a week, and now there's riots. Well, today, you don't necessarily do bread. You go after the grid. You go after the computer system. You go after the financial system. Then the bread stops. So in the absence of electricity, the computer network, and the financial system, our societies will implode. Enemies don't need to fire a missile over a city. A missile comes with a return address. Mutual assured deterrence works. But who will know who hacked our computer grid? Who do we attack if our computer grid is hacked? Maybe it's anonymous. Maybe it's the Koreans. It can be backtrailed through a third country.
It could be an inside job. Obama could open the door to China.
And it makes it much more likely to happen. The Cold War, mutual assured destruction worked during all the Cold War because each
you knew where the missiles were coming from.
But in this situation, if our financial system is hacked, if everybody's accounts just goes gibberish, haywire, and nobody can do a transaction, within a week, the grid will be down. The stores
Matt Bracken, you're absolutely right. 5 more minutes straight ahead, third hour. Tell everybody tune in, folks. This is serious business.
Thank you for listening to
This is serious business. I'm going to get this guy back on for 2 hours to take your calls next week if he can do it. He'll be back. Stay with us. So John Kasich, who almost has no delegates. Like I said, if he was in the Daytona Speedway, race, he would... he'd be like maybe 100 miles at the end of the race into it, with Trump at 500, Ted Cruz at 300 or so. And they're just trying to spin the idea that all this is okay. And then Trump responded to that as Ted Cruz comes out and they say is set to win Arizona. Weeks ago, Trump won by a huge percentage. Doesn't matter. Because the Republican establishment already had the, quote, superdelegates in there, who they bring the delegates together, and then they just say, okay, well, we're going to go for Cruz now. And then CNN, MSNBC, they all ask, why do we even have elections then? And they go, that's a good question. Just permanent rule like China by the inner party. They appoint their successors. And then they even have MSNBC and others acting like I'm a kook. There were... I don't want to exaggerate. I saw 10 articles in BuzzFeed and Alternet and all the usual Media Matters, all the usual suspects, basically implying I'm crazy, that I don't want them to take it from Trump, and that it's normal. and that I want riots or something with Roger Stone. Oh, how dare us say we're going to go be at Cleveland because they're announcing they're going to steal it and then protest that. Can you imagine having our popular vote stolen and we would engage in the First Amendment? Oh, I guess that never existed either, right? Just like millions of people the last 20 years. This was going on when I first got on air. People bring me the court filings. They'd show me, Mr. Jones, my mother owned the house. When she died, she gave it to me. I've lived there with my wife 10 years. Remember having these people on. Look, the deed was paid off in 1972. This bank never had a deed. It's homesteaded under the state of Texas, and they came and they took the house. It's a fraud, Mr. Jones. They file fraudulent. They take houses. And I'd have these guys in with their lawyers, and I'd be reading it. I'd show it to my dad. I'd show it to lawyers, and lawyers were like, you don't want to mess with that. Boy, those courts are, yeah, when you get into property, you don't want to stay out of that. We'd go down to the county tax assessor and interview her, catch her in the hallway. Nelda Wells Spears was her name, and we'd go, you're taking old people's houses. She goes, we don't take houses. And I'd cut people having their houses taken. I go, well, you sell them on the courthouse steps. She goes, we don't do that. No, we don't, Mr. Jones. And I go, well, you're allowing banks to take houses they don't even have the deed to. No, we don't. And then running down the hall, here'd come the SWAT team. They'd get up against me, start bumping into me. In fact, that's on video. Mike Hansen ought to dig that stuff out. SWAT team running up, bumping into me. And then I would go up in their office and preach at them a couple times, and then by the end of it, they were apologized. And then, of course, though, they fired the head of the SWAT team and brought in somebody else. But who knows? He might be a nice guy. One time I was eating in a cafeteria by myself, and the Travis County SWAT team head guy comes over and goes, Alex, how you doing? And started talking to me. I was just like, whatever, man. I don't want your job. That's all I know. Anyways, I don't mean to digress. Let's go to this Donald Trump clip responding to Kasich. Here it is.
Why is a guy allowed to run? All he's doing is just he goes from place to place and loses, and he keeps running. Well, why doesn't Marco Rubio do that? Why doesn't Jeb Bush do that? Why didn't all of them do that? After it was their time. Now, if he wants to go and have his name put in nomination in the convention, he can do that. He doesn't have to run and take my votes because he's taking my votes. He's not taking Cruz's votes. He's taking my votes.
And again, that's Trump doing an impromptu cafe TV interview. I love the fact that he'll just randomly let some lady or guy with an iPhone interview him for 2 minutes. That's a really positive thing about Trump. Look at this headline, and I've told folks about this as I've read about it, and I've experienced it, I've seen it down there at the Guatemalan border, but Mexico tortures migrant citizens in effort to slow Central American surge. They actually give you 6 months to a year hard labor, and they torture you. But Mexico says we've got to let everybody in. Hey, I'm all for letting folks in. They just can't get babies paid for free and stuff. I mean, Mexico doesn't let you do that. China doesn't let you do that. But see, you got all these Spanish-speaking TV channels run by the globalists just selling this hoax that we've got to open the border. Leaked memo reveals how the Donald Trump campaign really feels about mainstream media and the government. We're going to be breaking that down in this hour. We also have a lot of really big reports out there that we're going to be going over, dealing with this so-called biggest WikiLeaks-style data dump ever. When I first saw this yesterday, I said, it's going to be low-level groups trying to protect their money. It's going to be the Russian networks. As soon as I saw that they were going after that soccer, that international football group, this is the big mega banks that control trillions, that create trillions in derivatives, that engage in all forms of drug dealing, money laundering, child kidnapping, white slavery, overthrow of governments, $5 billion to overthrow Ukraine, $5 billion to the rebels in Syria. This is the most corrupt group you can imagine, simply leaking this to the Germans, handing it out to 100 different newspapers or more in the last year to, quote, vet it. No, that was to make sure that it didn't connect to any Western operations and to cherry pick what to go after. And sure enough, it's in the news today. They're saying this is a selective leak by the West against other networks they don't control. This is how it works. You get Arthur Andersen previously, or now it's another big accounting firm that the former Attorney General runs. Then you can have offshore accounts. Then you cannot pay taxes. They certify it, and the government doesn't touch it because it's full of vice presidents, former presidents on their boards, former attorney generals, former FBI directors. There's only 2 or 3 of these firms in D.C., like Arthur Andersen, and then you're left alone. Now, the law says you can have an offshore bank account. The law says you can go to the Cayman Islands or Switzerland or Luxembourg. But when they want to, they will come and shake you down and arrest you. This is a model of global government where you have the FBI going out and arresting the leadership of the International Football League, the International Soccer League. This is global governance. And I'm going to go over that later in the hour with our guest and get his view on it because he's an expert on people going offshore and more. But WikiLeaks reveals IMF plan to cause a credit event in Greece and destabilize Europe. Don't forget that. The French elite, where it went wrong. Financial Times admitting they don't pay taxes themselves. French billionaire Dassault to face trial for tax fraud. Chinese newspaper editor resigns over media control. Associated Press willfully cooperated with the Nazis to show how they're controlled. Top German journalist admits mainstream media is completely fake. We quote all lie for the CIA in Germany. It's a whole bunch of their biggest reporters coming out. Why is that important? Because when it comes out of Germany particularly, people see Germany as like, oh, modern, liberal, you can really trust it. It's the worst garbage you'll ever find. Some of their news is accurate if you research it, but general scandal news is really coming out of the CIA, out of the MI6, out of Israel, out of other groups, but they fence it through Germany because somehow they have credibility. They never got over being occupied. High earners say goodbye to France. So, again, they want this international tax grab. Tax traders widen division in belt-tightening France. And now they're trying to blame Russia for $2 billion in the, quote, biggest scandal ever with this Panama data dump, the Panama Papers. $2 billion? I mean, that is nothing. You know how many trillions exchange hands in the currency markets every day? The rigged stock markets, the rigged credit default swaps, the rigged currency, the rigged interest rates, all of it. They admit it's all rigged is what's crazy. Just like they've tried to steal elections, they've manipulated them before, but never come right out and said, we're going to put Paul Ryan in. This is Karl Rove last week, even if he doesn't have one delegate. And Kasich is showing his wares, saying, you know, it doesn't matter if he's only got a few, he deserves to win. I don't know what you call this coming out in the open. Is this really the fall of America, the fall of the West? Or is this a psyop to prepare us for just anything? Because when things get this crazy in history, you go over the edge of a cliff. Are we going over the edge of the cliff right now? Have we reached the event horizon? We're going to talk geopolitics. We're going to talk Syria. We're going to talk Iran. We're going to talk Ukraine. We're going to talk Obama. We're going to talk Black Lives Matter and the destabilization program. We're going to talk the entire waterfront, 2016 and beyond. But first off, I don't know his view. I follow his articles, but he's pretty libertarian, conservative, apolitical, though. He just does analysis of the world. Best-selling nonfiction author, best-selling fiction author. James Wesley Rawls is an American novelist and blogger who is best known for his recently completed Patriots novel series. Rawls is a former U.S. Army intelligence officer. He is the founder of the senior editor of survivalblog.com, which is one of the top sites in the world with tens of millions of visitors a month. For the past 10 years, he's covered survival and preparedness topics from a constitutional Christian libertarian perspective. His latest novel is titled Land of Promise. He's got another one coming out, too. The first book in the Counter Caliphate Chronicle series. This novel, set 2 decades in the future, describes the establishment of a Christian nation under siege. Now, I could do 3 hours with this guy because I got a lot to say, a lot of angles to cover. He's only on to the bottom of the next hour, but I want to invite him back in a few weeks for a part 2 for 2 full hours because he was willing to do it today, and he's a busy guy. Because I've got my reporters popping in for the last 30 minutes of the next hour. I may push them, though, up to David Knight, though. We'll see how this goes. But I just threw out that menu of what I want to cover. But front and center is, what is this caliphate plan? Why would the West be bold enough to bring in 5 million people they know, many of which are military-age men and are jihadis? Will they carry out attacks and then martial law comes in like areas of Europe have already done? And how will our political elite get away with bringing them in and then having them attack us? Is that part of this victory over logic and common sense? Just like, in effect, they're suspending the election by stealing Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump's delegates openly. I mean, we're really entering a new phase. Is this bravado? Is this arrogance? Is this megalomania?